Dear friends, welcome to this latest episode of the podcast series, The Way Out is In. I am Jo Confino, working at the intersection of personal transformation and systems evolution.
And I'm Brother Phap Huu, a Zen Buddhist monk, student of Zen Master Thich Nhat Hanh in the Plum village tradition.
And brother, today we're going to talk about something in Buddhism called Right Livelihood. And we're going to look at really how can we, in our work, but also in the rest of our life, find joy and feel deeply connected, and also make a positive impact in the world.
The way out is in.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jo Confino.
And I'm Brother Phap Huu.
So, brother, we are doing this at a distance. You are in Harvard. I'm in Plum Village. How is your American trip going?
The American trip is flowing well. I first arrived at New York City for an event, and coming into the concrete jungle where dreams are made of. I arrived also into a field of energy where it's very, very busy. It is it can be very stressful. And there was a lot of energies. And something I picked up, and I'm sharing this not to like criticize or point fingers, but because everybody is in a mindset of like doing. And so the present mind of the present moment and in the present body is definitely not there, because it just feels like everybody's moving towards the future. And in that spirit, there's a particular attitude where it's like chin up and just look forward. I don't see you. You're not important. And it was it's a very different culture than in Plum Village, where we learn to, or not just in Plum Village, but anybody in the Dharma, or in a spiritual dimension that we embody. We learn to have presence. We learn to recognize one another just by the way we look. And I was catching myself absorbing this particular energy of not seeing each other in the streets of New York or sitting at a cafe. And a part of me was like, okay, if that is the attitude, I'm going to do that too. I won't care about anybody. And then I caught myself in like, okay, this is why we practice. We have to go against the stream. We have to go against the culture that has become a norm, which is like, do. I need my coffee. I'm out. No particular. It's the autopilot of saying thank you is there, but it's more than that. It's like recognizing the kindness of the friends who makes the coffee, and when I'm giving the money, it's not just a transaction of money, but it's a transaction of human connection. And I caught myself like, okay, no. Be kind, smile, generate that presence. So I've been aware of how I'm showing up outside of the Plum Village community, as well as outside of the Plum Village culture, into, let's say, quote unquote mainstream culture, or the culture that we have co-created together. And understanding when Thai, our teacher Zen Master Thich Nhat Hanh, saying that each and every one of us, we have a spiritual dimension inside that we can generate wherever we go, and that is a contribution to what we want to build. When we talk about um, a peaceful environment, a loving kindness culture, it's not words that we recite and chant, but it is, we have to embody it. And this is when you're in the world, right? You're at a coffee shop, you're at the street waiting to cross, and you hear cars are honking, people are cussing because people are angry, road raging. I was witnessing, and I was present, smiling to everything that was happening in the present moment. And then my choice, like, what am I going to offer in that moment?
So, brother, this is, of course, very relevant to the topic we 5 minutes ago chose, which is around right livelihood, because I lived in and worked in New York for 5 years, and it's quite harsh from a workplace, in the sense that everyone's striving for success, everyone wants to prove themselves, everyone feels that they need to give all of themselves to their work. There's a lot of pressure that you can easily, you can get, if you're fired, you get chucked out of your work on that day, and you have to collect your box of things. That actually there's very little security and enormous amounts of pressure and competition. So, so let's talk about right livelihood. And one of the reasons I suggested the topic just now is because I was coaching 3 people this morning. And what was common amongst all of them was a feeling of disenchantment with their work, that they're all working in a field that's contributing to a better world, but feeling either not good enough, feeling that they're making enough impact, feeling that there's a lack of collegiality, that actually the old pressures in other jobs of sort of of status are sort of showing up. So, work takes up a lot of our time, or for a lot of people, a lot of their time. And it can cause a lot of stress and unhappiness, even when we're working to create a better world. So it would be really good just to sort of investigate, first of all, within the Plum Village tradition and within Buddhism, just let's talk about what does right livelihood actually mean. So let's start off with an understanding of that before we sort of dive in.
Thank you, Joe. I think when we hear about right livelihood, we associate it with a career right away, which is, like you said, it's very important. A career, having the means to support oneself, education, a roof over our head, food on the table, um, means for just daily life. Like that is very important. Um, but in the broader deep dive and view on right livelihood, the word livelihood, it means, for me, when I hear about it, is like, it's my impact as a human being, 24 hours a day. That's livelihood. So it's not just of what we are contributing and doing to offer, but it's also how we are consuming, how we are receiving the choices that we make on a daily basis. That is livelihood. We all have a livelihood, right? So, in terms of the right livelihood, we know that this is part of the eightfold path of Buddhism, and there is a deep connection to it, because to have right livelihood, we also have to cultivate right view, and then cultivate right speech, and then right action, which is also right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration, right insight. And then also there is right livelihood, which is, the livelihood can become the foundation to um, to continue to cultivate these other 7 pathways, but don't be caught up in the order, because in Buddhism, all teachings, we always have to have the insight of interbeing, where it's all connected and it all supports one another. Sometimes when you're practicing right mindfulness, you are practicing right livelihood already. And then when you're practicing right livelihood, you are embodying right mindfulness, which has built in also concentration that can lead to insight, right view. So it all threads. It's the path threads and become a support for one another. So right livelihood is a question and a koan, for all of us to reflect on how we are living this very present moment, our impact that we are giving towards the 3 times, which is supporting this continuous stream of life, which is how we're going to impact the past, because this present moment will become the past, and then how we're impacting the future, because this present moment is making the future. The future is only made of the present moment. So as a meditator, as somebody who breathe in spirituality, which is all of us, we are constantly reflecting right livelihood. How is this livelihood also impacting my store consciousness, my mind consciousness, my bodies, right? The bodies of this present moment body, but also my body of the cosmic energy, and then my body of continuation, my body, and we have eight bodies in our school of Buddhism, and there's just so many layers, and we're all looking for jobs so that we can put a roof over our head, food on our table, and to support ourselves, support our family, sometimes support our parents. And there's just so many layers here. And sometimes it also feels like what I am doing is not aligned with my deepest aspiration, especially after coming to a retreat. We're asked to see what is our deepest aspiration. And so this question and this reflection, it's deep, and sometimes it's hard because not everybody is privileged. Not everybody has the means to choose what we can do, the pathways we want to have impact. Because some of us, we have to be janitors. Some of us, we have to um, work the 9 to 5 in an office, and so on and so on. And it's not glamorous. And for me, that's why I wanted to bring in this other aspect. Is like, yes, we are doing 9 to 5, as a bar, not a bar. What's the word for those who makes coffee? Barista. Is
In
that
a
right?
coffee house, it would be a barista, yes.
That's right. Okay. A barista, or a flight attendant, a janitor, a landscaper, etc. and etc. And but how do we be compassionate towards ourselves while we do all of this? And then for those of us who are working at different positions, that can bring in a lot of money for our livelihood, and have a reflection, what is our impact as leaders, what is our impact as managers, as CEOs, etc. What kind of culture are we building within our teams, our workspace? And so the right livelihood becomes a big koan for each and every one of us. And a koan is a question that we can keep reflecting on to have insight. We have had people who come to Plum Village. I have a good friend who was an executive for Coca-Cola, in Vietnam. And after coming to Plum Village, she's like, ooh, I can't continue to do this. And because she had resources, so she channeled her energy and investment into creating a vegetarian restaurant in Vietnam, and it's very successful now, and it gives her a lot of joy and happiness because she's able to walk a new path and have a new impact. And this is somebody who has, like I shared, has choices. A- Um, and I'm still very good friends with her. So I always ask her. I call her boss. I'm like, boss, you've done this aspiration, but how are you? How are you living your life so that you don't try to be number one? Because they at one point they were like number one in like vegetarian restaurant in Vietnam or something like that. I'm like, how's your ego, my friend? you know like are is the aspiration still there? How are you building your team? What kind of culture that you have developed? Are Is there space for deep listening, for understanding among employees, etc., etc.? And this topic we can keep diving, but I'm speaking from also a position as a monk. So I also want to bring it back to you, Joe, because you were a journalist for a very long time, and you also lived in New York, in London, and you're still living in the lay world, where that is something that you have to put your mind focus on. Oh, it's tax season. It's like, okay, do we have enough to sustain ourselves, etc., etc.? So I think you probably, and many of us listeners, have to reflect on this and meditate and come to peace with it also.
Mm. Thank you for the question, brother. Often when we do our work, when we're in our jobs, what we're trying to do is prove ourselves or prove to somebody that we're good enough. And it might be to, we all bring our childhood issues to our work. So it might be that we never got the recognition, however hard we worked. And then often we go into jobs where we find a boss who, however hard we work, doesn't recognize us. So what we find is often we're either repeating patterns from our childhood or doing everything we can to avoid mistakes we felt our parents made with us. We'd end up overcompensating. So what I find in work is often we are acting out in work. So rather than being true to ourselves, if we're not mindful of the cause of that difficulty, we will often respond to it in ways that are unskillful. So I find that actually, if we start to understand why we tend to respond in certain ways, what our scars and wounds are in life, then when all the things that happen in work come towards us, we can see other people's behavior and our own behavior in the context of complexity of emotions. In one of the retreats in Plum Village, people who asked a question said, I'm in a job which I don't feel I can really have the impact I want. I'm not very happy there. So I'm going to go off and find another job more in line with my values. Brother, what's your advice to me? And he said, well, that's great. If you want to go and find another job, that's good. But have you thought about the change you can bring in your existing job? So rather than complaining about what's being done to you, can you see yourself empowering yourself to actually create the change you want in work? And so I often feel that people feel they're a victim at work, that they're a victim of the system, the victim of their bosses, they're the victim of their busyness, they're the victim of all the projects they have to manage. And often they feel powerless to act themselves. And I think often we underestimate our power to actually start to change things. I'll give you an example, brother. When I came to London and we did the first live podcast recording, I stayed in a basic hotel in King's Cross in London. And when we arrived, it was incredibly busy. And I went up and I waited my turn and I asked for a quiet room. And even though she was really busy, she took the time and the energy to look at where the rooms were free and found us a really quiet room. And I was really touched by the fact that even though she didn't have a sort of powerful job, and it was a job that clearly was very stressed and very busy, that she was acting in a very kind way. And I asked, I said, firstly, I appreciate it. I said, thank you so much for taking the time when you're so busy. And I'd noticed in the queue other people complaining about things. And I said, how do you cope with things when you're busy and you're being criticized or people are complaining? And she said, well, if someone comes with that anger, that they're probably on the edge, that something's happened to them that has put them in a difficult situation. Rather than respond to that anger with anger, that if I'm kind to them, then I'm giving them the opportunity to step back. And I thought, wow, because what she was saying was she was showing up with kindness, thoughtfulness, changing the whole situation. It changed my whole experience. I would now go back to that, even though it wasn't a great hotel, I would go back to that hotel. And it'd be lovely, brother, for you just to, in a sense, just to riff off that about moving from being a victim to recognizing that we can create change in the world.
Mm. Well, it makes me also want to visit that hotel too, and just be grateful for such bodhisattvas that are hidden in the world, because exactly that person's way of being present, or it just has impact right there, right then, right? And instead of seeing the position as not important or important, you're free. You suddenly have freedom within the work that you're doing. You're not caught by, is this a high position? How many more years do I have to do this until I climb, etc., etc., etc. Which, to have goals are very important in our lives, as well as in the language of service. We have to have aspirations in order to have energy. Our volition becomes a source of energy in order to give and offer. And it's okay to also feel proud and happy of what we're doing, of what we're offering. What we have been educated is competition, like you said, as well as to 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 be better, to get a better position in order to consider ourselves more successful. And we lose the present moment because of that. We lose the journey. We lose the joy of walking a path, of a career, of offering of service, because we're just thinking further ahead. It's like, I'm just only doing this for a few years, and then I'm gonna da 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 da. Which, once again, I don't want to be criticizing or condemning any pathways, but the path of aimlessness and signlessness in Buddhism also teaches us that happiness is actually not there at that diploma or that position, but happiness is the path, meaning that in every pathways that we're walking, there are opportunities to cultivate joy and happiness. And what the fear of not having enough, and the fear of not being good enough, is a complex that we all have to breathe and transform, because that also pushes us in the direction, or it doesn't allow us to be free and to say, actually, this is a very toxic environment. The managers that I have is not supportive. It is making me become more and more of an aggressive person. And actually, I can let go of this and do something less, but still be joyful, happy, and alive. So livelihood is also the question, is like, what we are doing, what we are choosing to do, is it making our hearts sing? Is it allowing us to feel so alive even though we make less, but it's giving me the quality of life that is deeper, is more profound. And I think this is what our teacher always asks all of us, because there are daily concerns that we have to take care of. But what is our ultimate concern? Because that will become our legacy. What is our ultimate impact that we want to offer in the spirit of continuation? Like, what will we be remembered by? Is it that is it that position, that job, how much money we made? Because at that last moment of breathing and letting go, a lot of we have heard from a lot of people who shared from the elders, when you get to interview them, like, what are the things that they want to tell the youth? And a lot of them always share and reminisce on the joy of life. Like, do not take it for granted. Do not forget to tell the one that you um, do not tell your beloved how much you love them. Do not waste and take for granted a moment of true connection, and so on and so on. And so this wisdom, this ancient wisdom of deep connection and deep presence, is in all culture. It's in all culture, all religion, as well as in all insights from our elders. And the culture that we are living in, and that has been built on from the industrial revolution, as well as the capitalist world that we're living in, is trying to it's not trying, it has pushed us into a different mindset, which is be successful, have the best cars, have the best house, have the best apartment to show off, to post on social media, etc., etc. And it just it's just, these are just smoke bombs. They're instant joy and gratification, but what happens when you turn off the screen, right? What is your livelihood that you're living now? Who's around you? What kind of spirit that you are embodying every morning that you wake up? Can you smile to the 24 hours that is ahead of you, or is it dreadful? So the right livelihood, deep looking, is also from empowering the ones that are in positions to change, and to change culture, to bring love, compassion. And also, right livelihood is also a reflection. This environment, this culture that I'm a part of, am I thriving as a human being? Yeah, right livelihood is a pathway to also look at our situation of the 8 hours, 9 hours, 12 hours that we are working, and to see what impact that is doing towards us also, as our human body, our human mind, our human hearts. Is it making us a toxic person? Because if it is, we also have to have the courage and the non-fear to let go of it, in order to look for a, a an environment, a work, a job that is caring for our aspiration. And our aspiration can just be, I just want to be a kind person, and that's still my aspiration today. I still want to be a kind person. And so, like, am I burning out from this job? Am I becoming angrier, becoming more aggressive? So these are all reflections that we all have to ask. And this is engaged Buddhism.
Thank you, brother. You mentioned earlier about not always planning for the future, but being in the present. And it reminds me that when I was a young man, and in our local high street, there was a shop selling lamps and light bulbs and things like electrical equipment. And I sort of had bought things a few times, and I got to know the people, and I knew that it was a couple of, they were Greek Cypriots, and they had been saving up for 20 years in order to be able to go back to Cyprus and buy a house and retire there. And that was their dream, that they were going to live there. One day I went in there, and the husband was not there, and the wife was there, and she was looking very sort of upset. And I asked her, just checked in with her and asked her how she was. And she said her husband had passed away, and that the dream of going to Cyprus had gone. And it cut so deep into me, because I realized exactly then, even though I had not sort of become involved in Buddhism or Buddhist philosophy, that they had been living a life that was only in the future, and had been working all the hours of the day and night to then retire, and then didn't get to enjoy that. And it was a reminder for me that actually we need to live day by day with an eye to the future, obviously, but not to base our lives on something that will happen in the future, because then we miss the present moment, as you say. And the other thing, brother, I'm hearing you saying, well, a few things, is one is, which I think is so important, is that however strong we are, if we are in a toxic environment or being forced to behave in ways that we find going against our values, that after a time that infects our system. However strong we are, if we're in an environment that is where we have to behave in a certain way, after a while, that's how we will behave. And we won't even notice that shift happening. But actually, we often will become the very thing we don't like if we keep acting in that way. So I really value hearing you say that. And the other thing is about, which I wanted, be lovely to hear from you, Brother Bit, is about, you're talking about presence and being rather than doing. Because a lot of time at work, the only thing that is valued, or that appears to be valued, is what you practically achieve. So did you make that deadline? Did you get that project done on time? Did you build revenues by 20% in a year? And there's very, very little credit given to the soft skills, which is, did people feel that they were able to find a balance in their lives? Did people actually, was there a way that people could raise issues or difficulties in a way that they didn't feel that they would be singled out or bullied? And in a sense, we all know that's the most important thing, and yet it's rarely recognized. And so I just wanted to ask you a bit, brother, about that sense of how can we build our sense of presence? How do we counteract this culture of doing and become more a sense of being and doing? It's not about what, we often think of a binary choice, don't we? We're either being or we're doing, but actually by being, we do more effectively. So how can we, in our work life, in difficult circumstances, and of course there are difficult circumstances in the monastery as well, sort of find a place where we can ground ourselves in our presence and not act out?
What comes up for me is, Tai always loves to have a play on word and on the quotes of the world, which one of it is like, don't just sit there, do something. And then Tai's like, don't just do something, sit there. and and actually knowing how to sit is so difficult and it's so challenging, as well as Tai's counter insight, which is like time is money. And Tai's like, no, time is being. Time is to be alive. And the doing that we speak of in this term, what you just asked me, it's the doing that is not allowing yourself to be present. And we're not against doing. I'm just saying this because we're like Sister True Dedication like recently made a post on her Instagram, and she's like, meditation is very normal. I'm a normal human being. I need to sit. I need to take care of myself. I need to meditate. There's not voices. There's not woo woo. There's not, and sometimes we think, oh, the monastics, oh, we just sit, we do nothing. And of course, we can talk about peace and we can talk about not doing. But no, no, no. We do a lot. And the doing is what gives us so much energy and aspiration. But to do in the light of spirituality is first we have to know how to be, because it's the being that enforces the doing with the deep impact that we would like to seamlessly offer in the present moment, that has a continuous life stream of continuation of body, speech, and mind. So that's why when we first come to the monastery or a retreat, we have to come back to fundamental practice. We have to come to learning to arrive and be at home in our body, at home in the present moment. Because only by being at home in the present moment can we really feel alive, and it can inform us of how we are being, how we are living. And by this, we have a new way of seeing and a new way of doing, so that our doing is not a mechanic, it's not autopilot, it's not in order to just arrive at the future, and we are ready to forsaken the present moment and not be alive, not be in the here and now and connected to the wonders of the present moment in the doing. So first of all, my practice as a brother, as a monk, as also a doer, is always coming back and checking with myself, what is the energy that is present in my being right here, right now? How was my sleep? How was my day yesterday? What energies am I carrying right now? And how will that impact my team, my organizing team, my mentor mentee groups, my meetings that I'm facilitating? Because in the being, it is channeling the doing, right? So that's why these moments of how do you apply this practice is like you have to come home and connect with yourself. What energies are coming up by listening to somebody share a viewpoint? And sometimes I listen and I'm just like so emotional, and I just want to cuss. I'm just like, you have no idea what you're saying. But of course, if I sorry, yeah, monks were human beings, so still practicing, still transforming our energies, and and of course, I keep it in here, and I'm not gonna say it because that will become action, um, and I'm gonna transform that view and that energy in the present moment, so that my being is is transforming, and I'm not going to contribute to this culture of aggression. So I'm here, I'm practicing, I'm engaging with my own energies, my own thoughts, my own reaction, and I'm transforming, and I'm still listening with my whole being. And I'm like, you are angry, you are upset, I am emotional, and I'm gonna care for that. I'm gonna be present as I am listening, as I'm continuing to be doing. So by the presence, it's fundamental, but this is what you carry wherever you go. So on a daily basis, even when you're a Zen master like our teacher, every day you still have to cultivate your sense of being. We we our goal in life is to be more alive, is to be more present, is to be more loving, is to be more compassionate, be more kinder, in order to show up at our workplace, at the challenges, at the difficulty that life gives us. But our way of doing is different. And our way of being, that's what shifts the system, that's what shifts the culture. And when you have anger can be a bell of mindfulness that tells us we see injustice, we see the suffering, and we can be with the anger. And the anger becomes a voice for us to also to have empathy, to have compassion, because compassion can also come from anger. Sometimes it can come from what we're seeing because it tells us that this is wrong. But in the being in that moment is if we allow anger to always be there and not transform and not channel it to another energy, then we will become exactly that outer energy that have made us angry. So this practice is so deep and it's so um, transformative of the three times of our ancestral lineage that we're transforming, as well as we are teaching in that moment. So there's many bodies, like I mentioned, cosmic body, but our human body is a teaching body also. There's an awakened body that we can bring up. We all have the nature of awakened, of enlightenment inside each and every one of us. So we can bring that body into the workspace, into the difficult situation, and knowing that how we are going to react, how we are going to interact. How are we interacting? Are we gonna fight, or are we freezing, or are we gonna run away? And all of this becomes a teaching moment to a whole generation. But if we be and we know how to care for ourselves, we have an anchor. We are calling the emotions. We're using our ray of mindfulness to shine into this exact moment, into our own self and the situation around us. And we will have insight in order to know I need to act, but how am I acting? Is it coming from love? And do not think that um, we cannot be fast and we cannot be um, engaging, strong in our action, but it's how we are doing it. And do not also think that being soft is a weakness. I think sometimes being soft is the most strongest impact. It's almost like sometimes the silence is the loudest noise. The silence is the most powerful ambience that we are offering in that moment. And so why not be soft? Why not be kinder? Because that softness and that kinder is very loud. In a moment of big aggression, the kindness, the softness becomes a louder action because it is showing our humanity. It is showing our heart of love.
Beautiful, brother. Thank you. And so I just want to come, because what I'm enjoying about what you're saying is that, often in our thoughts, that all we're bringing to work is our sort of actions and the way our mind is and our intellect, but actually we're bringing all of our emotions. And as you say, we're bringing our physical body because that shows many signs of how we are, and that is also a sort of received by people in a very powerful way. So we're bringing our thoughts into our work, we bring our emotions into work, bring our physical body. But you were saying we bring our cosmic body to work. And I'm just sort of wondering, what does it mean to bring our cosmic body to work? How can we be aware of that? And what does that actually mean? So, because what I hear you say is it's very helpful to expand our sense of who actually is showing up to work. There's the part of us we think is showing up, but actually there are many other parts of us showing up.
Yeah. Let me just go down the list real quick, and then we can explore a little bit of the cosmic body.
Beautiful. Thank you.
So our teacher, Zen Master Thich Nhat Hanh, in one of his later book called The Art of Living, he writes on this that we can see ourselves more than just this body. And that is also the insight that we are not just this particular self. We're made of so many other bodies and conditions. And so it's to touch our own interbeing nature inside of us. And interbeing, it means that we cannot be by ourselves. We can only interbe. Therefore, we are here. And the first body is the human body. We learn to care for it. We learn to be attentive to it. We learn to accept it. We learn to celebrate our body in whatever shape and form. And then we have a Buddha body. And this is important for us who are Buddhists, who sometimes we think like the Buddha is the ultimate teacher, and we have also allowed our thoughts and our views to allow the Buddha to become a god. But the Buddha never wanted to be seen as that. And Buddha means awakened, an awakened person. And Buddha, awakening. All of us, we have that. And our teacher emphasizes on this again and again and again, because Buddhism is a path for becoming an awakened being that is that has deep connection and has love inside of our own hearts, and the freedom that we get to be as a human being and to not be caught in boxes that we create for each other. And so our teacher emphasizes that all of us, we have a Buddha body, we have awakening inside of us. We just have to cultivate it. And there are moments that we're not a Buddha. It's okay, but remember that we have Buddha nature inside of us. And then to 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 celebrate and to support that Buddha body, we have a spiritual practice body. We have the responsibility to care for our spiritual dimension. And we don't have to be religious to understand that we all have a spiritual connection. When we're connected to Mother Earth, it's very spiritual. When we're connected to the mountain, we can have a very spiritual moment with the mountains, the rivers, the tree, the ocean. And so the spiritual body allows us to be so deeply connected. And it humbles us that as a human being, I'm not I'm not the best. And there's so much more conditions that is out there supporting my life. And so the spirituality is an important element and an important foundation that we all have to invest in, as well as celebrate and embrace and cultivate, because it informs us of our awareness and our attention of how we are taking care of ourselves, as well as the ones we love and the beyond. And then to support our spiritual body, we have a community body. So we have celebrated a lot individualism and, success as an individual. But our teacher and the wisdom of the Buddha has saying that no, we need community, we need support, we need friendship. We need those to tell us that we're walking down a path of suffering, to remind us, do not go there. So community becomes mirrors, becomes support. And in true friendship, we're able to tell and to share the most difficult and painful reflections in order so that we don't walk down a path of suffering. And as we know, we've been learning, and I've learned so much from our when we're looking at animals and looking at nature, how the roots of trees are deeply interconnected and nourishing one another, as well as when animals they move together, they hunt together, it's more impactful, right? As well as we are, as human beings, our nature is actually community. It's only later that we've built, all these boxes, that we've lost that touch and that wisdom. And then our body outside the body. Wow, that's I mean, we can go like for a few Dharma talks on the next four. So our body outside the body, and I think I've touched on that already. Is the that it's more than us that is here. Our continuation body, and we speak a lot on this in Buddhism, to understand that every action has continuation, and then to also know that we are a stream. We are a part of a stream of ancestral lineage, spiritual as well as genetic, and then of of land continuation and environment, because we are also part of the environment. We're not, the environment is not outside of us and then we are separate, but so we're also a continuation of Gaia, of Mother Earth. And to have that deep understanding, we can feel less alone, as well as we have the insight of responsibility. What is our continuation of every action that we are contributing, and of what we are cultivating? And then arrives at our cosmic body. And then I just want to lean and then our ultimate body. And because in the cosmic body, we're going to have the ultimate body, but we can't go on this, or it'll become a 4-hour episode. But our cosmic body, I think it embraces everything that I've just shared.
Yay, we got there.
We've arrived there finally, because we had to talk about the other bodies in order to understand that we are the cosmos. And Tai has this calligraphy that, you know that really informs us of deep interbeing. The piece of bread in your hands is the body of the whole cosmos. And that is for us to have a deep understanding that this piece of bread didn't just come from nowhere, nothing. It is all of this lifetime of the existence of time and space. And it's a miracle to have this piece of bread. So be grateful. Hold it with gratitude. Hold it with reverence. Eat it with gratitude. Eat it with reverence. And now looking back at each and every one of us, we are more than this body. We also embody a whole cosmos. And this can inform us of so much. This can inform us that we can start to accept, maybe not this physical body, but we can accept this cosmic body that can help us accept this physical body, can accept this continuation body, because maybe our ancestors were not the greatest, and they have created so much pain and harm. And so therefore we carry this pain and harm, and we carry this suffering. But if we can see that, but we are also this cosmic body that is beyond time and space. We can touch the spiritual foundation in this cosmic body, and then we can touch the ancestral body, the community body, the Buddha body, then the human body, then we're also the ultimate body. It just allows us to connect deeper to ourselves in a way that allows us to not be caught in just this present moment. And I think a lot of us who have shame with the body and shame with being alive, this can help us be free and live deeply.
So, brother, this is very helpful in many ways. And what comes to mind, we so rarely think in these terms. So a lot of, there was someone I was coaching yesterday who said they were embarrassed they devote all their time to their work and all their energy to their work and commitment to their work. And there's so many people whose work dominates their lives. And I think what you just said is really helpful because it shows such a breadth of, actually, it's not just our mind that's coming to work. It's actually, there's so much that is coming to work with us. And that if we actually were to integrate all of that into our understanding, that we would be unable to see work in the same narrow way as we currently do. And the reason work seems to dominate our lives is because actually we have a very narrow view of what life is all about. And so work becomes a very easy place for us to focus all of our attention. So I think that is brilliant, because I think if I were a younger man recognizing I was bringing my cosmic body to work with me alongside all these other bodies, that would have given me a different relationship to myself and to the work I do.
You are still a young man, Jo. Just putting it out there.
Thank you, Phap Huu. That's very, very kind. I'm young at heart.
You're young. You're very young to the cosmos.
Brother, a couple of other things. I want to talk about the difference between doing what we love and doing what we're good at. And I recognize this is with a big proviso, as you said, that sometimes there are many people in this world who are forced into taking on jobs that do not serve them well or may not serve society well, but that they need to put food on their table, and they don't necessarily have choices that other people have. So that is completely understood. And also there are people able to make choices. I learnt there was a moment where I was thinking of leaving the Guardian and had been offered a job with a large sustainability consultancy, how to act, whether to take this job or not. And I went to see the person who trained me up as a coach, and he sent me to the person who trained him up as a coach. And I met him on the North Terminal at Gatwick Airport in the Costa Coffee Bar. And I don't remember much about the conversation, but I just remember one thing, actually. And he said, it's really important at times like these that you know the difference between what you're good at and what you love doing. Because most of us fall into the trap that we take on roles because we've had experience of doing them, because we're just used to doing that work. But often it's not work we love. When I looked at the opportunity in the eye of leaving the Guardian, I realized that I loved the Guardian and that the other job I could have done, but it wouldn't have brought me happiness. And that was partly because it came to the final point, and I asked the question. I said, well, actually, I currently do a 4-day week at the Guardian, and I'd like to just talk about my work-life balance. And I know the boss of the company said, well, there isn't work-life balance, there's just work. And I thought, wow, that is not going to bring my happiness. And there was another example for the Daily Telegraph in New York, whatever, 35 years ago. And I was coming back to the UK, and I had an offer either to go to a Sunday newspaper. It was actually the Sunday Express. Sort of the job offer had a lot of status. It was head of the business and finance section. It was head of the foreign affairs section. It was head of this section. It was a very senior position. Or there was a job at the Guardian, which was actually at a slightly lower level than I had been working with before I left for New York. And everybody was telling me, you'd be mad not to take the job at the Sunday Express, and actually, why go to the Guardian? And actually, I remember flying back from London to New York, and on the plane realizing, actually, the worst thing to do is make a decision based on status. And actually, where would I be happiest? And I knew that where I'd be happiest was at the Guardian, because actually it was a place where I could give myself fully to it. The values were attuned. The sort of work I would do was, I could commit to. So all that said, there is a big difference between going after status, going after approval, and being in touch with the things that we love the most. And I just wanted to sort of ask you a little bit about, how you see that difference. How do we connect to what we love and resist the sort of the temptations of status and money and, I've got the qualifications, so I should just do it.
There's so many ways I can go on this.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to I'm just trying to check in with myself, because I I also had that question for my own career as a monk. And when I use that word career as a monk, um, for me, I stopped using that word a lot, even though sometimes in the Buddhist literature, it's like um, the path of practice will become my whole career. But then the word career for me becomes a job, and then it stimulates also the desire for position, the desire for recognition, the desire for power, etc., and etc. And understanding that the insight of interbeing becomes very liberating in our training for this, because our teacher uses the image of a body, and he says each one of you in this community are cells in this body, and a body can only function healthy and well and active when all the cells are in harmony, and the cells love to offer its energy, its capacity in its understanding of its time of what it can do. And it can also learn to accept its role and responsibility and love it, as well as knowing um, the impermanence nature of the body and of the cell. It also will grow and change and know how to adapt and how to be fully in its present moment. And so all of this is to say that this is why I love our practice, because it's so practical. It's like the present moment. It's like you have to know in this present moment, what is your skill set? What is your greatest offering? What can I do now that is having a contribution to my community, um, my loved ones, and then my own self in this moment. It took me a very long time to also love being an abbot, love being a facilitator. Um, but then I was like, dude, I'm really good at this. Like, I. And then I learned to celebrate it. Right? It's not then just a career. It's not just then a job, or I'm not caught by the label, but I can dance so well in this position, and I can move so well, and I can breathe through it so easily, and I can see the joy and um, the energy that we're able to produce when these meetings can flow so beautifully, when when there is real communication and there's listening happening. And so suddenly, I see myself, in this moment, I'm good at this, and I'm gonna celebrate it. I'm gonna know that I'm good at this, and I'm gonna offer this. I'm gonna serve from the heart in this talent that I have, in this skillfulness that I have. And so the doing, the loving, the being, they all become one then. And then there's freedom there, right? And then when there's freedom and there's love and there's doing and there's impact, there's a celebration, then my view towards it changes. And then there's moments in the community, like monastic retreat, I'm like, put me in a cooking team. Let me just wash pots, because that's also that was part of my training. That was also from my humbling upbringing. That has informed me who I am, and I don't ever want to forget that. And there are moments when I'm give put me up for toilets, let me clean the toilets. There were times when we had the dry toilets in Upper Hamlet, and our one of our new toilet block was being constructed, and the dry toilet means, like, every day you have to take it out, you know put it in the earth, put sawdust, let the transformation of it have its process. And not many people were enjoying that, but I was like, dude, I'm in. I'm one of the members that, like, that believed in destroyed toilet system during that time, and I'm gonna enjoy doing this because that was the present moment of what we needed. So even though I had aspiration, a deep aspiration, it's like, I know I'm not gonna always be in the toilet, and I wanted to learn to also be a good Dharma teacher and a good brother. But in that moment, I'm not being, I'm not, I'm not being pushed away by my own thoughts of what the world has informed me. It's like, this is a low position, etc., 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 and you beat up yourself, and you become angry, you become depressed because of what you're not allowing yourself to arrive at, etc., etc. So the doing, I I've been so lucky. Like, I've done almost every responsibility in Plum Village. Like, we have, if you ever come to Plum Village and you can look at our list of responsibilities, I've done almost everything. The only one that I haven't done is sound system in the community. But then through this, like, this dance and this thread, you also challenge, and you get to open yourself up to all these different roles, and then you also get to see where you can offer the most. And in Plum Village, our teacher, he told the monks and the nuns, he's like, be free from this idea that you can only offer and have impact after 10 years or 15 years or 20 years as a monk. The moment you're a practitioner, whether you're a monastic or not, the moment you're practicing mindfulness, you're contributing already. There's impact already. Learn to be humble, to be open, but also as a member of the community, you have to know your responsibility. Like, you can't always use that humble card and not have responsibility and say, oh, I just want to be humble. I just want to sweep the ground. It's like, my brother, you're an elder. We need you to be an elder, to really practice and to be there to listen and to support us. And so it's I I love this question because and I love this deep looking at this livelihood, even for myself as a monastic. um, in the doing, like I'm embracing this busy Phap Huu because I'm thriving right now. Like I feel the busyness is a source of energy and it's a source of offering too. And I can only be young for a period in my life, and then there's gonna be a moment when it's gonna be different, and I'm gonna have to embrace that difference and knowing that position and knowing where my cell is growing into the body where I have to to give, right? So it's a continuous deep looking, and part of it is like what you said, Joe, but I'm loving this, and it's not to be, this is when you have freedom. I'm loving this. I can be busy, I can be running, and then I can be very still. I can laugh and joke when I was angry and when I was upset, and I learned to go and say sorry. I learned to be better the next day. So, and that makes life very beautiful, very dynamic and colorful. And I always joke with you, Joe, and you always say this, and you always ask me, Papu, what's going on in the monastery? And I tell you, and you always say, never a boring day in the monastery. I'm like, yep, there's there's 150 characteristics in our community, and to dance and to be and to do and to sit and to go up and down with all of these characteristics is a great joy. And we're not looking for a perfect body. We're not looking for a perfect system. We're not looking for a perfect community. And this is where there's perfect in the imperfection. I can only be imperfect. And that is equally beautiful and wonderful. And feeling this wholeness of imperfection. Yeah.
Beautiful, brother. And I remember once when I interviewed Thich Nhat Hanh, and I said to him, I said, Tai, to be really honest with you, I come here because of you. You know, because you've been through wars, you've had you know, through this deep pain, you have found an extraordinary path. I trust you because you're going through, you've been through this process and come out the other side of that. You know, the way out is in. And I said, but why would I want to listen to these young monks who come to Plum Village and haven't been that long in practice? You know, what have they got to offer? And Tai looked at me and said, whatever happens outside of the monastery also happens inside of the monastery. Brother, I've had a very big smile on my face while you've been talking. And part of the reason is because I feel exactly the same way. Because, you know, with my coaching work, you know, someone said to me, you know, you feel depressed at the end of the day when you just listen to people's problems. I said, no, I actually feel revived. I love the fact that I can be in deep connection and conversation with someone, and that person can bring up, you know, the most difficult issues they're facing, and that I don't feel it's depressing, and I don't feel, oh my God, there's no hope, and I don't feel, oh my God, you know, is there any possibility of change? Because I can see within that person always the capacity for change. I can see with that person all the capacity to be beautiful. I can see within that person all the capacity to know deeply what it is that they can change and how that will affect them. Because the problem is that most people just don't see how beautiful they are. You know, I can have someone who comes with full of problems, and all I see is I hear that and I recognize it, and I see the patterns that have created that, and the depth of their kindness, the depth of their intuition, the depth of their wish to serve, etc., etc. And I'm just wondering if that is similar to you, because obviously when people come to Plum Village, they normally come because of a suffering. Normally, some people will come because of an aspiration, but a lot of people they suffer deeply, and I could imagine that constant suffering within the community could easily bring everyone down, but it doesn't seem to. And I'm just wondering if there's a similar experience amongst, with you and the monastics about just when you hear someone's pain is that you see beyond something else.
I think well, we've been trained to listen, right? To listen to our own suffering. And sometimes it's easier to generate compassion and kindness when we listen to other people's suffering. So the listening of suffering, it just becomes this wonderful bridge of connection and feeling that we all go through suffering. We all have our ups and downs, and it helps us be free from this idea to be um this idea of like, I'm gonna train this, even I'm gonna be a meditator to never suffer again. I'm just like, you don't really understand it, because we're always gonna suffer. But how do we take care of our suffering, and how do we practice with our suffering? And so when I listen to a lot of the suffering, it just I feel more connected, actually, and I feel a lot of compassion, and it informs me and it helps me um, practice more. And people sometimes friends come with big questions, and I don't know the answer, but what I can do is just, that sucks, thank you for sharing, and I feel that pain, and let's breathe with this and allow the Buddha body, the Buddha nature, to cultivate an understanding, and then find a way forward. So it's when there is a practice of channeling, though, is very important, right? It's like, yes, listening to the suffering is a big part of our practice, but there are other elements in our practice that is very important that we are cultivating also. So, we talked about a lot of spirituality and practice and doing, but there's also an element of the joy that we have to bring alive in our daily life. Um, and the joy here, there's many layers to looking at it. Yes, there are moments like literally joy of just going to a park and sitting on a swing and being in touch with our child energy inside of us, and then just the remembrance of the wonder of life that is there, and to not lose touch of that, to not lose touch of the beauty of a connection, of a tree, of being able to play the guitar and sing, being able to cook a meal and just know that I am taking care of myself, and being grateful for all the farmers, being grateful to all of the workers that have even packaged these cherry tomatoes for them to arrive at my house. Like, wow, it's just to not lose touch of that. So there's a element of also cultivating all these other qualities in order to continue to embrace the suffering, and in order to continue to do the service. So our teacher also say, in the livelihood, don't just think of the doing, but also think of the being, in the element of also enjoying life, playing, having the time to celebrate the happiness that are present, and then also embracing the openness to continue to learn, continue to study, continue to be curious of the world, be curious of oneself, be curious of our partner, be curious about our ancestors, and then the joy of practice, and then the doing of practice, the being of practice, the learning of practice. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you, brother. So this feels like a good moment to stop And we have a tradition always, but sometimes to end with a short guided meditation so that people can let go of everything they've heard. We can just come back to the present moment. And don't know if you have the capacity today to offer us a short meditation just before we end.
Of course, it's time to be, people. So let us come back and enjoy a moment of practice together. So, dear friends, wherever you may be, if you're sitting on a bus, sitting on an airplane, on a train, on a commute, if you're going for a jog, going on a walk, doing the chores, whatever you may be doing, I invite you to f- be still, whether that is sitting or standing or laying down, and just start to beautifully celebrate your breath, connect to that breath that is present for yourself. As you breathe in, know this is an in breath. As you breathe out, know this is an out breath. Let the breath be. It knows how to be. You don't have to do the breathing. The breathing is there. If your breath is long, let it be long. If your breath is short, let it be short. As you breathe in, celebrate your in breath. As you breathe out, celebrate your out breath. In, out. As you breathe in, become aware of your body. As you breathe out, relax the whole body. Allow your body to be there, to be present, to release any of the tension that has built up. This tenderness, this love that we offer to our body allows us to be more in touch with the present moment. Breathing in, aware, feeling the body. Breathing out, releasing the tension in the body. Breathing in, I smile to life. Breathing out, I celebrate this life. In, life. Out, celebrate. Breathing in, I care for my spiritual body. Breathing out, I cultivate presence, stillness, love in this moment, empowering my spiritual body. Breathing in, I smile to my cosmic body, breathing out. I am vast. I am open. I am spacious. Thank you, dear friends, for practicing with us and for listening.
So, dear friends, we hope you have found some value and enjoyed this episode. If you have and want to know more, you can find all the previous episodes of our podcast on the Plum Village app and also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all other podcast platforms.
You can also find all previous guided meditation in the on-the-go section of the Plum Village app. The podcast is co-produced with Global Optimism and the Plum Village app with support from the Thich Nhat Hanh Foundation. If you feel inspired to support the podcast moving forward, please go to www.tnhf.org/donate. And we want to thank our friends and collaborators. Our dear friend Clay, aka the Podfather and co-producer, our other Joe, our audio editing, Anka, our show notes and publishing, Jasmine and Cindy, our social media guardian angels, and to all of you for listening and supporting us.